so I'm hopelessly behind on my Netflix, and now I have to binge 60 Minutes Australia and Arizona Horizon 2. Jeez. Richard Rellis, reporter with The Republic, here with Mary Jo Pitzel, Stacey Bartringer, and Robert Englund. I don't know where to start, but I guess let's start as far-flung as we can get. Australia. Stacey, Kari Lake has been sort of promoting this interview on her social media for a while now, and now 60 Minutes finally released it. What was this, and is it worth watching?
Well, I am definitely not going to answer the second part of your question.
Or Money Heist Season 3.
She had a high comedic value, though.
Oh, jeez.
So the backstory here, if anybody missed it, yeah, like Richard, like you said, Kari Lake has been touting this video interview because in her view, she really tears apart the 60 Minutes Australia reporter that asked her some questions. The segment itself on the show is a 20-minute segment all about whether Donald Trump is going to run again in 2024. So it looks at, how he has shifted some within the Republican Party, if he still has a grip on the party. And they talk to Kari Lake as an example of, he still has a lot of influence. Obviously, Kari Lake and Donald Trump are buddies. They kind of feed off of each other sometimes. They have a lot of charisma together, as we've seen when they're on stage together here in Arizona. So it sort of is almost like two different views of the same interview. So you have 60 Minutes Australia, which broke it up and kind of threaded her throughout their 20-minute show. And then you have Kari Lake, who has put it out there as, she's the gubernatorial candidate who's taking on the fake news media.
Did it get contentious between her and the reporter?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And it's like a little interesting because I guess they interviewed her kind of like we're doing now, like via video. So it's like her going back and forth with a screen, which is a little bit weird.
Liam, this is actually funny. This is
comical.
almost satire the way you're approaching this. And I hope the people of Australia are waking up to the media. This is a perfect example of the insanity of the media.
I asked the Lake campaign yesterday why she agreed to the interview. Obviously, she's a Trump fan, but I don't know of any Arizona voters that are in Australia or regular watchers of 60 Minutes Australia, and they did not respond to my question.
So moving to the county attorney's office, and Stacey and Robert, you guys had twin bylines. I imagine there were screaming matches about who went first, but I mean, what went on? I mean, we have a bunch of cases dropped, Robert, none of them mine or my friends, but like what? I mean, your stories talked about these cases not being done. Allister's first statement says if the prosecutor in charge had done their job, this wouldn't have happened, which I guess is technically true, correct?
Well, it's a lot worse than that. So last week I was reporting on this idea that the county attorney's office botched 180 misdemeanor cases, which means they will not be prosecuted. The offenders, or the alleged offenders in those cases, are going to walk because no charges were filed within the statute of limitations. So the ability to file charges is gone, evaporated. That's left dozens of DUI cases, domestic violence cases, assault cases. The perpetrators in those cases get to go about their merry lives without facing any consequences. When I initially approached the county attorney's office for a statement on that, Adel offered a voluminous response, all of which essentially pointed the finger at her staff and said, frankly, her words, it was absurd to suggest or assume that as county attorney, she could be responsible for every aspect of her office. And then she went on to say that it was a prosecutor's fault, that if a prosecutor had done their job, none of this would have happened.
And then the governor holds a news conference. And then the governor holds a news conference, and Stacey, as is her job, goes and sits there as he has a gaggle. Ducey, from my experience, does not answer a question he doesn't want to answer. So he could have dodged this, but what did he say?
Well, so after an unrelated event, he spoke to a group of reporters, and just full disclosure, not me, but I wish it was me because it was a great question. Somebody asked him about the situation with Allister Adel. He didn't use her name, but he says that leaders need to take accountability and stop blaming their people, which in Ducey language is a pretty forceful rebuke. I have heard him say that the 11th commandment is not to speak ill of another Republican. And so this is a little bit of a departure from that. He said that his concern was, the victims of these cases that are not going to see justice, and all the time that line level prosecutors and cops put into these cases, and now justice would not be served.
And so that then causes a response from Adele again, Robert, that sort of skins back a bit what she said.
Again, it's not so simple. So on Tuesday, after the governor made those remarks very early in the morning, I called her office and said, "What's your response?" And we got crickets for hours. 8 hours later, I called again and said, "I need a response, or we're going to reflect that you're not talking about this issue," which we did. We updated the story to reflect that. Lo and behold, 26 hours after I asked the original statement, she came out with a statement saying, "The governor's right," used his own words in her own statement, and said she apologized to the victims.
She appeared on Arizona Horizon on Channel 8, Arizona PBS, I think we're contractually obligated to say. How was her interview with Ted Simons, Robert?
It wasn't pretty. And again, all of this is under the prism you're watching this through. It's not just that there's an error by the county attorney's office. It's a series of problems that have snowballed over the last 2 or 3 months, in which questions are being raised first by us over whether she's actually physically present in the office, whether she's impaired since entering a rehab facility in September, and whether or not she's able to do her job. Following that, 5 of her top 5 criminal prosecutors essentially wrote a letter calling for an investigation by the state bar, and the county supervisors said she has conducted county business while impaired, and they have no confidence in her ability to run the office. So that's why all this is taking place. Jumped at the Horizon interview, in which she was repeatedly asked why about her sobriety and whether she can handle the job, and why people are calling for her resignation. And you got a very troubled-looking Adele trying to answer those questions.
Okay, I'll slot that into my viewing list after the Sex and the City reboot. Mary Jo, there was talk at the legislature of a special session that was supposed to be over by now for a couple issues. One, this precinct committee thing about appointing precinct committee people rather than electing them, and then the second being a tax and repeal over. I'll leave it to you to explain.
Yeah. So what we have is the legislature got themselves into a bit of a jam with a bill they passed very quickly earlier this month. It was unanimous support, so it's not all blame on one party. And the effect of that bill, unintended, they say, was that it removed the ability to elect precinct committee people. Now, the only lawmakers that are upset about this are on the Republican side, because the people that came down to the Capitol to complain about this, and boy, did they complain, are all Republican voters. They want the ability to be elected, even though the legislation that was passed earlier this month says you'll be appointed, but we will consider that the same as being elected. You'll have all the powers and duties. Not good enough. But, legislate in haste, repent at leisure, as they like to say around here. And they're trying to repent real quickly, and it ain't working out because the Democrats don't see any need to walk this back. They realize that they've got their Republican colleagues sort of over a barrel. Their base is very upset with them. The Democrats' base isn't concerned. I mean, heck, Democrats don't even field a lot of elected precinct committee people. So in an attempt to find a fix for that, they have now married this up with the idea of repealing and replacing last year's massive tax cut. It would amount to $1 billion permanent reduction in state revenue. Now, this is something that's a high priority of Governor Ducey. The landscape on this is a little clearer now that Proposition 208 has been ruled unconstitutional. So you put something in the special session that the governor, and certainly a lot of Republicans want, and you put something in that the Republicans want. They need each other. And it was sort of a nice, I guess, idea to package them together. But like a lot of these things, there's, all this heat and light about, oh, we're going to have a special session. It'll happen in an hour. Oh, we'll call it in, tomorrow morning. Nothing's happened. As you said, Richard, people thought maybe it would almost be over by now. Nothing has happened.
Is there anything in the special session proposals that Democrats want? Like, they're not fans of repealing the PC bill, and they're not fans of a tax cut, correct?
Well, I think they'd be right. I mean, they'd be happy to repeal the tax cut, but they don't want to replace it with a deeper tax cut. No, there's nothing in there for Democrats, which, then in a way it's irrelevant. But they do need, if they want to get these things done very quickly, especially the precinct committee people, they need Democratic support to get an emergency clause or something to take effect right away. And that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and then the precinct committee thing is even more complex because it's not just Republicans who want to be elected as precinct committee people. It's like the Trump wing of the Republican Party. As I did some looking into what is the Patriot movement a couple of years ago, a lot of the Patriots have seen a way to upend the party, in their view, by getting these slots and trying to change the party from within. I'm not sure how much they can do once they're there, but that seems to be the gateway that they're in.
Right. It is. It's been promoted by Steve Bannon, this idea of sort of rebuilding the Republican Party, remaking it from the grassroots up, and the PCs are your foundational building blocks. And obviously, a lot of these people don't like the idea of appointment because they apparently don't trust the district chair people who would appoint them. Maybe they put in the wrong kind of person. So this is still roiling at the Capitol. Everybody will go away for a couple of days, come back and try again next week. But I'm told it's going to take more than just fixing one bill to fix this. It's probably going to be a series of legislation, and the amount of energy and time and resources spent on this when, we've got water problems, we've got school funding issues, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty amazing.
Right.
Only in Arizona can you get sideways with your own bill, right?
Yeah.
Right. Mary Jo, Stacy, Robert, thanks for joining me, and thank you with all the video options and 60 Minutes Australia and Arizona Horizon and Netflix shows you could stream, for spending the time with us.
Great. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks.
Thanks, Richard.